linebacker room performance this camp?
I'm very excited about our linebacker group. We have great depth. I really feel like there's 6 guys that have competed really hard through the training camp and really through all of summer and really spring ball, if you go back that far, that are going to have an opportunity to help us. And we get Caleb back at some point. That's going to even create more depth for us. So I've been really pleased with the approach in the meeting room, the approach on the practice field, and I'm excited about what this group has the potential to be.
Liam?
What have you seen from the transfer guys like Stephon, Elijah, just getting acclimated? And we've heard a lot about them in this offseason. How are they doing with your eyes?
Yeah, both Elijah and Stephon play a critical role for us because one of the reasons, we felt like we wanted to have the opportunity to add them to the roster was their experience. And, Stephon playing in Coach White's system at multiple schools coming in here, that experience is critical. He's able to play really all 3 linebacker spots just because his knowledge of what this defense is and his experience in it. Same with Elijah in a different way. Elijah's played a lot of ball. He has a natural leadership to him. He's one of those guys that I've enjoyed coaching over the last few years that knows that this is his last opportunity and he wants to maximize it. He wants to make the most of it. And both of those guys have been able to make an impact. And I think it's a credit to them. And then I also think it's a credit to the other guys in the room because they've embraced the new element of guys coming in and being part of what they were building before.
Chris?
Through 3 weeks of preseason, how much have you figured out who fits what role and basically where they are, or is there an idea of playing them all across the board?
Yeah, early in camp and really my philosophy in the spring and the summer was to expose as many guys to different position work, as much position versatility as they could have. Now that we're within 2 weeks of game time, it's really about making sure that each piece fits to the best of our ability. So, we have started to tighten up the rotation a little bit, who plays where, and things are really coming more into focus on how that rotation is going to look and what it will look like in 10 days from now.
Brendan?
When we spoke to Juice, I guess back in the spring, he had talked about like earlier when Tony first came in, he wasn't sure how he would fit in that scheme. And he ended up liking it. So now that you've seen him through spring, through summer, how has he done with this scheme specifically?
Well, Juice is, in my eyes, Juice has made a tremendous jump from throughout the course of spring, the summer work, and fall camp. I think he's a very smart football player, which then allows him to play fast. That's one of the things we say program wide. If you understand what you're doing, that allows you to show your speed and physicality, and that's one of the things that showed up with Juice. That he's an ultra smart kid who's very conscientious. He's always trying to do things at a high level, and that is starting to pay off for him because I think he's seeing the results in how he's playing in team settings.
And if I could follow up, I know you weren't coaching linebackers last year, obviously you have a great understanding of the defense, though. What are the biggest differences, or the most notable differences, I guess, that you can point to between the last scheme and this one?
I think there's a little bit more of an element in terms of the run game. There's a little bit less gap specific because we do have more movement that happens. A little bit more about leverage to the football than ever before. I think there's more opportunities for the backers to play aggressive and downhill, which I think they like. They enjoy that element to it. And, there's probably a bigger emphasis on zone vision coverage. So less matching routes and more playing, off of playing the quarterback, breaking on balls. So there's a little bit more freedom to playing in those ways. And I think the guys have enjoyed that element to it.
Chris?
How has Blake Nicholson done, and what does he need to do to take the next step?
I think Blake has made a jump in the last week. I think as he becomes more comfortable within the system, as we continue to add things to it, and he becomes more comfortable, you saw him start to play faster, and that's ultimately what we need Blake to be able to do. Is he's gifted physically, and when he can just turn loose and play, that's when you see the best version of him.
Liam?
In this system, and you mentioned it earlier, the depth, but just going further into that, how important is it? Because there's so many variables in the way that Tony runs this defense to have all of those guys that when you send them on the field that they're going to be able to do their role.
Yeah, no, I think the strength of the Coach White system is the versatility that it has. You know, that you could be in 3 linebacker packages, but be in a 4-down rush look. You could be in a 3 linebacker package and have 3 guys off the ball. You could be in a 4 D lineman package and only have 2 backers. I mean, there's a lot of different elements to what we do, and having versatile linebackers that can do a lot of different things is a critical factor to it.
Corey?
Obviously, you look at the Alabama offense, and I know that probably starts in earnest today and for the rest of the time. But you looking at the offense, they're going to run what they're going to run. Does it matter at all if a running back is out? Like, are the linebackers watching like film of this running back to see how he moves, what he does? And does that change anything knowing that a starter is out?
Well, I mean, obviously, in reference to what you're talking about, I mean, I think, the running back there, the Miller kid that got hurt, I think he's a really good player. So, I mean, does it make a difference in how we prepare? No, it probably doesn't make any difference in terms of how we prepare, but just the awareness of who we're going against and the respect that we have for their whole running back room is going to be there. But obviously, we have a lot of respect for him as a player, and hopefully he's healthy and is able to get back, after his injury heals up.
Brendan?
A clarification point, when you guys have mentioned the Sam linebacker in the past, is that the position that can kind of move to the line sometimes, or is that something?
No, so our Sam is the guy that when we are going to put a linebacker on the line of scrimmage, that's the position that goes down. We do have packages where it could be the will. I mean, we have some versatility to it, but the Sam would be predominantly the one that would be on the line of scrimmage the most from a linebacker perspective.
When they talked about the jack before, is that this?
So the Sam Jack is essentially the same position for us. The Sam comes out of the linebacker room, the Jack comes out of the D-line room, and that's ultimately where the difference lies.
Aslan?
Omar Graham has had some really good moments here in terms of like preseason camp and things of that nature, but I guess health has always been the bugaboo for him. How has he sort of responded and looked for you guys?
Yeah, knock on wood, this is the longest sustained period that he's been healthy. I think that has been tremendous for him just because he's been able to stay in a rhythm. He's been able to stay with his progression, and that's something he hasn't really had the luxury of doing. And being able to see him now for a long stretch of time where he's healthy, he's starting to play, he's playing his best football since he's been here. So, I'm excited for Omar and looking forward to what the season's going to bring for him.
Corey?
But when you're looking at the return game, has there been 1 or 2 guys that have stood out that you feel confident are going to be used on August 30th?
Yeah, we have some depth there in terms of guys that I think are going to have opportunities to be really good for us. Starting the punt return game, I think Jalen Lucas is a guy that can be dynamic with the ball in his hands. We need to find ways to get him the ball both offensively and special team situations just because of how dynamic he can be. Squirrel White's another one that I think, ball in hand is a guy that we want to create opportunities for him in the return game. BJ Gibson is a guy who I think is really grown a lot as a punt return potential guy, and even Deuce Robinson has been back there catching balls. So we're going to have options, but those first 2 guys that I talked about I think are going to be the most dynamic ball in hand players that we have. In the kick return game, we have a little bit of versatility and skill set. Sam Singleton did a really good job for us a year ago. He's a freshman All-American in terms of a kick returner. So I do feel confident what he can bring to the table. Mekhi Danzy, his long speed is undoubtable, and what he could potentially do there. You still have Jalen and Squirrel that could work into that role as well. So we do have some flexibility and some depth there, and I think game situation and what the plan is will determine which guys are out there.
Brendan?
Replaced 2 really great specialists. I guess how's that competition gone this summer in replacing them, and is anyone kind of leading that right now?
Yeah, obviously, you have 2 All-Americans and Alex and Ryan, who had tremendous careers for a long period of time while they're here. So, there are big shoes to fill, but fortunately, we were able to build a roster with enough forethought in terms of what would happen when those guys are gone, because I think Jake Weinberg has a chance to be a special player. He's really been good the last 10 days. He had a phenomenal scrimmage on Saturday. He was 6 for 6, long as 63. Made another one that was 58. he's really in a good place and a good rhythm. I think Max Shimeno has a chance to be a really good punter for us. So, although, with all the respect in the world for the guys that aren't here anymore, I think we have some really good ones that have stepped in and have an opportunity to be very good for us.
Peter?
Coach, you were mentioning about Deuce Robinson getting mixed up on punt return. What was the decision, Rachel, having him put him in the mix? Is it something y'all thought about it when he came here, or is it something that you just wanted to see what he looks like in return?
No, I mean, in just total transparency, one of the things that, especially in a sky punt situation when you're backed up, I do think height matters a little bit, because you're gonna have more people in your face quicker. You have the smaller returner, sometimes they can lose a little more track of the ball. So we did wanna test Deuce and see if he's a guy that can help us, just because no one's gonna be in his field of vision. He's gonna be the tallest skilled player out there. So, very similar to what Keon Coleman was when he was the returner. Line of sight on the ball was never his issue. So that's just something we're looking at with Deuce. I don't know if it's really gonna translate that way, but we did wanna give the opportunity to see what it looked like.
Matt?
You coached Jaden Jones last year directly at edge. Obviously, you don't now, but still on the team. What have you seen that he's taken this big step? What have you seen from that?
Well, first on Jaden, he's had to overcome more than what his share of football adversity should be, and really in all aspects of his life, he's had some challenging things that he's had to go through since he's been at Florida State. And first of all, I'm really proud of his perseverance and the fact that he's willing to just, with nothing guaranteed to him, just continue to grind. I think it says a lot about who he is. In terms of his health, he's obviously did a good job in rehab. He's moving better than he ever has. He's been explosive. I think he understands, what this opportunity could present for him, and he wants to make the most of it. So I'm a big fan of Jaden Jones, and obviously I'm rooting for him, because not just because he's part of the team, but because of what he's had to overcome to be able to get to the place he is right now.
We'll go to Aslan for the last one.
Coach, I was listening to a podcast of a former NFL player, and he was just talking about when you get to this point in preseason camp, you can kind of just look around and know how things are going to go because you've been in it for so long. What are some of the things I guess you feel will show up with this team just being around it for this long right now?
I think there's some competitiveness with this team that I absolutely will show up on both sides of the ball. We have playmakers on both sides that have a high level of pride and competing. And you see that translating on the practice field. The Tommy Castellanos, Deuce Robinson, Randy Pittman. Some of those guys offensively, Squirrel White. They're extremely competitive, and that's good for us defensively because we have some obviously some playmakers too on our side, and to see those two sides go back and forth and battle it out, I think is good for our football team. We use the term, and I think a lot of people probably use the term, but we use it specifically in the program about iron sharpening iron, and that's what our practices have looked like really since spring. So I think the balance on both sides, the competitive nature, Coach Malzahn on the offensive side, Coach White on the defensive side, both guys that want to come in and make their mark, I think has brought the best out of both units throughout the course of camp and really since they've been here.